Daywalker versus True Blood, let the battle begin!
This is the last round! Fight!
Hi, I'm Steve from Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gamed, and a discussion in our group started happening right around when Book of the Dead released by Paizo for Pathfinder 2nd Edition about the undead dedications, becoming an undead as a player character. And that discussion kind of got a little deeper about vampires specifically and dampirs. And the discussion basically boiled down to, why would you ever become a vampire with all the inherent minuses that come along with being a vampire over being a dampier? And we're going to talk about that. First things first, we got to go over the differences, the major difference. We're not going to go over every feat because this bit will be 4 hours long and I would put you all to sleep. First, let's go over the major differences between Dhampir and the vampire dedication. So we're going to go over Dhampir first. And the first thing is, it's a versatile heritage. What the hell does that mean? It basically means you're going to pick an ancestry, which, by the way, Dhampir came out in the Advanced Player's Guide. And so basically your vampiriness is laid on top of another ancestry. So if you want to be an elf Dhampir, that's an okay thing to do. If you want to be a human Dhampir, you want to be a goblin Dhampir, just because, hey, you need to get those extra years in because Dhampirs live a little longer than those goblins do. Like I said, first things first, you're going to gain everything you would normally gain for whatever ancestry you picked initially. So you're going to pick goblin, you're going to get everything the goblin says to take, or dwarf, or human, or whatever ancestry you decide. And then instead of taking a heritage feat, you're going to take Dhampir as your heritage feat. And then Dhampir is going to give you a bunch of stuff instead of you selecting a heritage feat from your ancestry. Becoming a Dhampir gives you a bunch of initial benefits and also some detriments. As a Dhampir, you gain the Dhampir trait, as well as, because you've already had, say you're a goblin, you gain the goblin trait, your Dhampir, you gain the Dhampir trait as well. So it's an addition to. You gain negative healing, which is a bummer because negative effects, negative damage doesn't hurt you, and negative effects that heal undead will heal you. Positive healing won't affect you at all. So sorry, clerics, unless you're channeling that negative energy, you're not really going to be helping your Dhampir buddy. Also, and positive damage will hurt you as a Dhampir. So it's something to keep in mind. And you gain low light vision. But if you already had low light vision, you go straight to dark vision. All right. So basically, that's all you get for selecting Dhampir as your heritage feat for whatever ancestry you decided to be. So let's switch over to vampire. So vampire is rare versus the uncommon for Dhampir. So in your game, if you're not allowed to take rare things, well, bummer that you can't pick this. Or maybe your DM or GM needs a little extra convincing to see why you really want to become a vampire, and you really don't want to suck the blood out of all your friendly compatriots and turn them all into vampires. Maybe you turn them into Dhampirs. But the major difference between the Dhampir, which was a versatile heritage, and the vampire is a dedication. And we're going to go over a little bit of the ramifications of that a little later in this video. But just keep in mind that it's a dedication, which means as a Dhampir, I can start as level 1. I can level 1, I'm immediately a Dhampir. No problem. So long as I'm allowed to pick it, right? But for a vampire, I actually have to wait until I'm level 2. And part of the dedication requires me to die from a vampire, from a vampire sucking all my blood out. So the requirements are a little more difficult. Because at level 2, you have to have an encounter with a vampire. This can happen later. But, if you want to be a vampire as early as possible, you have to get bit by a vampire real early. And that vampire has to, do the deed. But meaning into dedication, meaning to take the dedication feat if you qualify. Say you did die, right? And vampire did suck out all your fluids. Now you have to burn up a class feat in order to take the vampire dedication. So you're talking about at even higher levels, even lower levels, some of the feats are really good, and you have to give up one of those few feats you get. I mean, we get 10 of them, or 10 to 11 of them for our character class. But you have to give up one of those feats every time you want to take a vampire feat a vampire dedication or archetype feat. So this is something to consider. Like I said, we're going to talk about that later, but to become more vampy, that's burning up a class feat. But this does come with some benefits, and actually it comes with more benefits and detriments than the Dhampir. So first things first, you gain the undead and vampire traits. So yet again, same thing as your old ancestry is still there. So you're a goblin vampire. You're a dwarf vampire. So you get those traits. You also get something called basic undead traits, which is a list of stuff that you get. And all of the undead dedications that are in the Book of the Dead get this. You gain the necro language, which is the language of undead. You get the ability called Undead Vision. Similar to the Dhampir, you gain low light vision. If you already had low light vision through your ancestry or other means, you're going to gain dark vision instead. You gain the same negative healing, so negative damage doesn't hurt you, and negative effects that heal undead will heal you. Positive damage will hurt you, and you gain no benefit from positive healing. Basically, it's exactly the same as what the Dhampir got. You get negative survival. Now, remember that if you're an undead, so the undead rules as per the bestiary, undead's at 0 or destroyed. So there's no dying for undead. So I hit a zombie and he's at 0, he just goes and he falls apart. But they made a little ability here to make sure that doesn't happen. So you kind of follow along with the regular player rules to a point. You get negative survival. Unlike normal undead, you're not destroyed at 0 hit points. You go unconscious and gain the dying condition just like you would as a player character. But the conundrum here is things like stabilize don't work on you. Things like healing don't work on you. So they have to find a more convincing way, or maybe have spells that do healing to undead to bring you back up. So when you go down, it's much harder. If your party's not prepared for you to be undead, it's much harder for them to bring you back up. So it might be possible for you to die. Funny enough, talking about dying, you're immune to death effects. So things like death knell, anything that has the death tag or the death trait is not going to affect you at all. You get disease and poison protection. You get +1 saving throws versus diseases and poisons. And you get the undead hunger. Now, this is a kind of a blanket ability for all the different undead archetypes. It says you don't need to eat or drink like a humanoid does, but you do have a thirst or a hunger based on the undead that you are. Zombies go for brains, ghouls go for human flesh, and you, of course, because you're a vampire, you love drinking blood. That's your jam. You just do it to it. Undead also don't need to sleep, but they do need to have like a 4-hour kind of like coma that they go into. A complete, it's almost like a trance that they kind of rejuvenate their body and, they stop rotting and all that good stuff. There is an advanced version of this. It is tied to one of the feats. And I believe, I didn't check every single one, but I checked most of them. Most of them have a feat that you can pick, one of the archetype feats that give you the advanced undead traits. And they boost these abilities up. But you don't have to take it. It's not required. But there is an advanced version if you so desire. You like some of these benefits. You gain a natural weapon in form of fangs, which they do D6 piercing. They have grapple and arm traits. You gain revulsion and vampire vulnerabilities. And most of you can figure out what these are. And you also get the drink blood ability. Because what kind of vampire are you going to be without drinking blood? Come on. Really? We're going to go into the vampire vulnerabilities that we mentioned before. Like I said, some of you can already guess what these are, but it's kind of interesting how they gamified some of the old-timey thoughts that we have when we think of vampires. We're going to go over revulsion. Revulsion is if someone brandishes garlic or a holy symbol of a non-evil god. So it's not just the crucifix like the old days. It's anything that's not evil. Any holy symbol that's not evil. And you don't have to be a cleric. You don't have to be able to cast spells to do this. You can be a fighter that follows a god and you're just brandishing a holy symbol and this will work on that vampire. What happens is in the first time that it is brandished, you cannot willingly go within 10 feet of the person brandishing that item, whether it's garlic or the holy symbol. If for some reason you are forced, someone pushes you or uses magic to compel you to move towards that object, you will immediately gain the fleeing condition, and you have to flee, and you lose the fleeing condition as soon as you end your movement 10 feet or more away from that person. After the first round, you can try to push yourself and break that 10-foot gap, and you have to make a will save to try to push through it. And if you succeed the will save, then you're good. You're good for D6 rounds. If you critically succeed, you're good for an hour, so most likely that won't matter. The other key thing here is brandishing. They described how to brandish in here as well. So brandishing is almost like raising your shield. You spend an action, which is interact, and you go, garlic, get away from me. Garlic. So that's something that, that works, attack of opportunity. If someone else who's next to that person does that, they can attack of opportunity them. So just having it on your person and having it shown isn't enough. You have to spend that action and kind of show it and go, spooky, spooky. Now on to the big one, sunlight. Sunlight's bad juju for vampires. Anytime you're exposed to direct sunlight, you immediately gain slowed 1. And this is a quick death spiral, I will tell you that much. This is a horrifying death spiral. You get slowed 1, and then every time you end your turn, still in direct sunlight, your slowed increases by 1. If you ever lose all 3 actions to this effect, you're destroyed. No save, no nothing. You just go, you burn up. Whoosh, you're gone. And also part of it is, because you're basically from the Shadow Realm-ish, you don't cast shadows and you don't cast reflections. It's kind of nice that they put that in there. So maybe it's not really a game thing, but if an NPC sees you next to them in the mirror, they go, vampire. All right. So now we got through the differences between Dhampir and vampire, the vampire dedication. So before we really jump into this, we're going to go back and bring over the thing that I talked about before of what does it cost to become either of these things. So as I said before, Dhampir, the only thing it really costs you is your heritage feat of whatever ancestry you picked. So sometimes that's a big decision, sometimes it's not so big a decision. You can't be that ancient elf Dhampir, right? You can't be that forged dwarf. You can't be that unbreakable goblin. It's got to be goblin Dhampir. It's got to be elf Dhampir. It's got to be dwarf Dhampir. So it's got to be, you have to sacrifice the heritage feat. But beyond that, what it lets you do, which is kind of interesting, is now since you have both your ancestry trait, whether it's goblin, whatever it is, and then you also have Dhampir, and they each have a list of ancestry feats you can take. You can take Dhampir ones. Now, obviously, you're probably going to focus more on the Dhampir ones because you picked Dhampir for a reason. But that doesn't mean you can't dip back into your original ancestry and pick and mix and match feats. And some feats maybe work well with the Dhampir feats you're picking, and you can kind of juggling back and forth. And part of your goblin traits are popping out, and part of your Dhampir traits are coming out, and you're kind of mixing this amalgamation character, which I think is a cool idea. And you really only pay a heritage feat, and you get a bunch of benefits. You also get the detriment of the negative healing thing, but if you're playing a Dhampir and you're kind of party and your GM is all aboard on this, they're going to kind of work with you, hopefully, instead of the cleric trying to constantly heal you in the back with damage and trying to kill you. Yeah, so mixing and matching is kind of cool. On to the vampire thing. Now, the vampire is purely handled through class feats. So even if you're a fighter, you're a barbarian, you're a wizard, it doesn't matter. You're burning up class feats to become more vampire. Now, some of the vampire feats are really, really cool. Not going to doubt it. But you're also losing part of your class to get it. Now, I know people are already screaming and typing in the comments. I hear you. The variant rule, the free dedication. The reason I bring up the class feat thing is not everyone plays with the class feat the variant rule, the free dedication. So some people will look at this, I can't wait to get vampire. And then they realize, wait, I have to give up maybe half my class to get what I want. It's not that, I'm not up to that jam, right? So it's just something to consider. It is rare. And like I said, some of the feats are really, really cool. But if you're not using the free dedication, I think that Dhampir is a better choice. unless you're really into just diving super deep into vampire and, you know, either 50-50 with your feats, or, I mean, you're picking vampire for a reason. You might as well go ham. But look, it's all up to your kids. I'm not saying that what the right decision or the wrong decision is. Just be aware that vampire does burn up your class feats, unless you have that free dedication variant rule that you play with. The other thing is that, which is something to consider, is Dhampir was out at the Advanced Player's Guide, and they actually went into the Ancestry Guide and gave them more feats to pick from. So they're going to get extra support. And the Book of the Dead with the vampire dedication came out. It just came out, so there's not as much support for it, and it's also a dedication. So I'm not to say that dedications don't get love, but Paizo more likely will put out a new dedication over giving extra dedication feats. And I'm not saying they will never put out a dedication feat for vampire, or maybe just like more focused on Dead Book again and give them more options. But we haven't seen too much of that. We've seen them more add to class options, class feats, ancestry Ancestry heritages in other books versus adding stuff to a specific dedication, because they only have so many pages. And the other thing to note is that because it's a dedication, it has the same requirement as almost every other dedication that I've seen. You need to take 2 archetype feats that in the vampire dedication line before you're allowed to select another dedication. If you wanted to like mix and match that and another dedication, maybe you wanted to pick, dedication lore master or something like that. So you would need, like the 1,000-year-old librarian. So because of that, you still have to take 2 feats, and that still has that requirement. So, all right. So now we got to talk about the feats. We got to talk about, playing a Dhampir versus playing a vampire. And what are the options that you get for, when you level up and you get either ancestry feats, or you get class feats, or the free dedication feats for vampire, and how fun is it to pick these things, and kind of the not really the abilities you get. We're not going to go over every feat because, like I said, this will be here for 3 hours. But I really enjoy in the Dhampir. There's a slew of first level feats. A lot of these came out in the Ancestry Guide, but not all. A couple of them were a part of the initial release, when they came out in the Advanced Player's Guide. And these first level feats, it kind of basically, from a lore perspective, you were descended from a specific type, a specific breed of vampire, and that gave you certain abilities. But all of these basically subclass of vampires can lead to a further feat down the line that you only can get by picking up these original feats. So I'm going to pick one that I can actually pronounce, because a lot of these are, these names are out there, man. Yeah, apologies for these pronunciations, because damn. The Strivika. Strivika and the other one, they both have the Taste Blood, the advanced feat at 5th level. You retain not only your vampiric parents' taste for blood, but their ability to gain vitality from it. You drink fresh blood from a living humanoid creature. You gain temporary hit points equal to that target's level that lasts for 10 minutes. The target must succeed a fort save against the higher of your class DC or spell DC, or it becomes drained 1. Regardless of the outcome, it is immune for your taste blood ability for 1 day. Further uses of this ability against the same target. Further use of this ability does not increase the gained condition or grant you temporary hit points. This is very similar to the vampire, as like I said, as vampire dedication, you gain drink blood, where someone who's restrained or grabbed or paralyzed, you can just you spend an action, bite them, suck out their blood, you gain temporary hit points. And same thing, you can't keep draining the same target. You're not going to gain any benefit from it, and they're not going to gain any detriment from it. Yeah, so the vampire starts with this ability basically, and as a Dhampir, you can select this ability. So this is when it comes down to what do I really want, and do the other abilities. Maybe remember, I'm giving up a 5th level feat, ancestry feat for this. Maybe there's another 5th level feat from my original ancestry that I really want. So if I was a vampire, I could get that, and I could basically still drink blood if I really want to. Well, as the vampire dedication, you kind of have to. There's bad stuff if you don't eat. Yeah, so I think that's really cool that there's a lore mechanic built in to I'm from this type of vampire or that type of vampire, and you gain some characteristics based on that. And if you just select the improvement feat at level 5, you kind of start embodying more and more of that vampire's kind of appearance and actions and kind of, yeah. So I think it's cool that they introduced that. There's not something like that in Vampire, but you could just say you kind of act like this way. But I like the fact that they almost gamified some of it. So it's like, we could tell what kind of vampire you are if you're picking one of these ones. Like, oh, well, I know you're from this type of vampire. So, but there are other feats in here. You can get fangs because you don't have fangs. The vampire dedication starts with fangs. You don't start with fangs. Beyond normal biting people, which does everything the same thing as a dwarf biting you. It's gonna hurt, but you can pick up the fangs at first level, which give you basically your teeth become weapons. They get a little better. Very similar, almost identical to what the vampire gets. So those are the first level feats. And like I said, a slew of the 5th level feats are those improvement feats for the specific dampirs, the Dhampir feats that you kind of like take after. So you can be kind of like Blade as a Dhampir. So funny enough, the vampire dedication and the I don't like the way that when they do this because it gets a little confusing. But both the Dhampir and the dedication vampire. The vampire dedication both have a feat called Daywalker, but they do different things. And that's like, it's just because it gets confusing when you're trying to look up something and you go, oh man, is it this one or this one? I have to look up this book for this one, but is it the ability? And so especially if it's listed, if you're using Nethys and you look up Daywalker, you're going to get 2 entries. You're not going to know which one's which. So I would like them to name them differently, but they basically have the same, let me preface this. They have different effects, but they have the same feel of effects. So remember, Dampirs are not hurt by the sun. They don't like it because they're part vampire, but they don't take any negative effects from it. So this is a 13th level feat, mind you. And for the vampire dedication, it's 6th. So let's give you the key difference. The Daywalker ability for Dampirs is actually pretty awesome. Whether through painstaking exposure, devoted prayer, or just simple luck, you found a greater affinity for life through the sun's light. When in an area of direct natural sunlight, your negative healing is suppressed, meaning you are healed by positive effects and harmed by negative energy. So this is a way to bypass that negative, but it's only when you're getting hit by sunlight. We're going to go over the vampire one a little later. But I'll go over that one as well because I just don't like when they name things the same thing. It makes things harder to find. But it's cool. You can kind of be Blade, But it is still like 13th level. But yet again, you can already walk in the sunlight as a Dhampir anyway. So, or your 13th level, you can go form of the bat, which you can turn into a bat because that's a thing that vampires do. So the Dhampir is really awesome. Right. If that's kind of your jam and you do have to deal with that negative healing until 13th level, if you do decide to pick up the Daywalker feat, but turning into a bat's also cool, but you can also always go back at 13th level. Maybe you don't want the 13th level feats. Maybe you want an earlier feat. You can always do that. Yet again, you're picking from 2 different ancestries. So you always have a lot of options. Maybe the 13th level option for your original ancestry is better or more in line with what you want to do with your character. So now we get to the vampire feats. So there are a lot more Dhampir feats just because there's a lot of those ones where it's like, okay, if you take this feat at first level, then you have access to this feat at 5th level. So there's a lot of like double up. So obviously if I pick the one feat that I'm descended from this type of vampire, all those other ones kind of become locked to me because you can't, lore-wise, how could you be from 2 different types of vampires? Well, I guess you could, but so now this is we're talking about the vampire dedication feats. Obviously, there's not as many because it's a dedication versus an ancestry, and we only have 1 book's worth of feats for this because on the other one we were dealing with 2 books worth of options. I love this at 4th level, Clinging Climber. You just basically get a climb speed of 15 feet. And you're always like climbing like a spider. I think that's cool. And having it always on climb speed, that's pretty nice. Even though it's only 15 feet, that's pretty dope. You get the traditional look into my eyes kind of compulsion thing. You get that's a manipulative charm. It's also at 4th level. You get pluses to deception and diplomacy against humanoids. That's okay. It's good. I'm not saying it's good, but what the major part of this, and the reason you pick this ability, is once per day you can cast Charm as a divine innate spell using your class or spell DC, whichever one is higher. Casting this requires you to look at the target's eyes, just as traditional, vampires, like, oh, look into my eyes. And the spell gains the visual trait. At 5th level and every 2 levels after that, the spell is heightened to an additional level. So when you hit 19th level, this is a 9th level spell. So it levels with you, which I think is awesome. They need to do this with a lot more things, and I think they need to retcon a lot more abilities in Pathfinder to work like this. Because there's a lot of times where you pick up a cool ability, and it was cool when you took it. And you used it a couple times. It was awesome. And now that DC is so low, it doesn't matter. So more of this. Even if you don't like this feat, I love how it's written, and I love how the fact that this feat grows with you, but it's still a once-a-day ability. So it's nothing so powerful. And then when you used your ability, maybe they pass, maybe they fail, doesn't matter. You still have that +1 to deception and diplomacy checks, deception to lie, and diplomacy to gather information and make impressions. So yet again, you can still convince people if you're playing that charisma vampire, that alluring vampire, you can still mess with them. But, you only have that once-a-day spell, but that spell grows with you, and I think that's just... I'm going to keep talking about that for the next hour, because, yes, more of that. You have Bat Form, you have Turn into Mist, which is just traditional, like, you spend an action, you turn into Mist. It's once a day, as the spell gaseous form. Boom, you just missed. I actually like the improved version of it at 14th level, Mist Escape. When you're reduced to 0 hit points, you instantly, as a free action, turn into mist. Your body automatically tries to save you, and shoop, and you turn into mist, and it doesn't burn up your once a day use of your turn to mist ability, which I think is nice. And you take a move action directly towards your coffin. So you have no control over this ability whatsoever, except that it tries to save you. And there's a bunch of other text to it where you stop taking damage on things because you're now a ball of mist. But you can still die if you're not taken care of after this ability ends. So just be careful. Make sure your allies kind of see where your mist goes before you kind of disappear into the distance. Oh, you also need Coffin Bound. Coffin Bound, we're not going to talk about, but it's basically like you're bonding part of your soul to a coffin. And you can now heal from it, but if it gets blown up, you're kind of boned. So, yeah, be careful with that one. But yeah, Mist Escape is awesome. Yeah. And you also get Dominating Gaze. This is 16th level. This is super high level. You stare into a target's eyes and enthrall them, shattering their free will. Oh, man, this is just the way this is written is awesome. Once per day, you can cast a 7th level Dominate spell. Yes. Using your class or spell DC, whichever is higher. They need to do more of this. They need to make things relevant throughout your character's journey. A lot of times you go and it's just like a flat DC, where it's a whatever, it tells you what the DC is and it never changes. And a lot of these abilities you just never use again. So it gains a visual trait. Once you're 18th level, Dominate heightens with you. Yes, and at 20th, it heightens to 8th level, and at 20th level, it heightens to 9th level. A creature succeed the save is temporarily immune from your domination for 24 hours. There is no per day limit to this. There's no frequency on this ability. You can keep doing it. I'm sorry. A target that succeeds its save is temporarily immune for 24 hours from this ability. Though in most cases, you can't cast a spell again within 24 hours. If you are destroyed, all of your Dominate spells from Dominating Gaze immediately end. It says that in the text, it says, I don't know. This is a GM ruling. This is not me ruling it. But there's no, on Dominating Gaze, it doesn't give you like once a day frequency, once an hour, nothing like that. But it says generally you can't use this. In most cases, you can't use the spell again within 24 hours. So read that as you will. So the text says you can't, but the ability itself doesn't say you can't. So that's up to your GM. If you're dominating people, I mean, come on. How many thralls do you really need? But that's the difference between the Dhampir and the Vampire Dedication. They each have their place. Like I said, there was a discussion in the group. I'm not going to name names, Jared, but Jared was the... I'm not going to name names, but you know who you are. Saying that the Vampire Dedication is worse. Completely 100% worse. And I have to say, in a certain situation, they have a leg to stand on because class feats are at a premium. And if you're not playing with the free dedication, and maybe free dedication with this, depending on the class, may be crazy powerful. I mean, you do get some really cool abilities with Vampire Dedication, but you also gain those pretty big detriments. I'm sorry. I completely forgot. We're talking about Daywalker. The Daywalker feat, remember in the Dhampir, while you're standing in sunlight, you basically turn off your negative healing ability. So you heal normally like a regular PC. So negative damage hurts you and positive healing heals you, right? That's when you're standing in sunlight. The Daywalker ability with the Vampire Dedication is through Profane Pledge or a Bloodline quirk, you can tolerate the sun's light. You gain the Advanced Undead traits. Remember, I was saying before that certain feats grant you the Advanced Undead traits, which empower your basic undead traits that you get by taking the dedication. We're not going to go over what those are. You can look them up in the Book of the Dead. But basically, most of your abilities that basic undead traits, basic undead benefits, they just get better. And here's the key part. You can't be destroyed by the sun's light. This does not prevent you from being slowed by the sun's exposure. So you can lose all of your actions and not have any actions. You're stuck in sunlight until the sun goes down. But you don't die specifically from sunlight. But keep in mind, someone can walk up and just stake you. That's a thing that can happen. So just be careful. Well, but that's my take on the Dhampir versus Vampire discussion that our group is having. I think they both have their place. I think they're both cool given the context of each independently one. Whether you were playing more of like a Blade or half-breed character like Vampire Hunter D, he was more like a Vampire Dedication. So I'd say that's a good comparison. Like Blade is more like a Dhampir, where Vampire Hunter D from Vampire Hunter D is more like a person with the Vampire Dedication, because he was much more affected by sunlight because Blade can go out in the sunlight and he's fine. He just loves it because he gets to operate all the time. But D takes on too much sunlight, which is almost exactly similar how this thing is. He's okay in the beginning. He starts slowing down. If he gets too much exposure, he's going to burst into flames. So, yeah, so it's a great. It depends if you want to play D from Vampire to D or Blade from Marvel and just go to town. That's kind of like how you can kind of view this. But let us know what you think in the comments below, because we love hearing from you. But this is Steve from Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gamed. May all your die rolls be crits, and may you always roll max damage. See you later.